now fell softly, like dust, over the Texas fields. It quieted the sound of faraway hammers and the rumble of trucks near the sharp wire fences of Camp Hearn. It was December 1944, and America's war machines were working hard. But here, in this calm place, a different kind of war was happening, one of quiet, worry, and waiting. On that cold morning, a train stopped with a loud squeak by the camp. Its doors opened, and men in torn coats stepped out, followed by a few women who weren't soldiers. Among them was a young pregnant woman, her belly big under a rough wool dress, her eyes tired from weeks of travel. The air was freezing. She stood steady on the platform, one hand on her side, the other holding a small cloth bag. Around her, other prisoners whispered, some praying, others swearing quietly. No one spoke loudly in English. The guards' voices shouted over the wind. They were now in the enemy's land, far from the Europe where their homes had burned to ashes. Inside the camp, wooden buildings stood in neat rows, their metal roofs shiny with frost. On the biggest wall, 2 letters were painted, PW for prisoner of war. The air smelled of wood smoke, mixed with boiled coffee and the sharp scent of wire fences. A sign pointed to Compound D, the women's area. For a moment, the woman paused, her heart heavy with fear. She'd heard on the ship that American camps were cruel, that women went hungry, and babies born here died before winter ended. She pulled her scarf tighter and walked forward. An American sergeant watched from a distance, chewing a pencil. He was young, maybe 23, a farm boy used to taming horses, not prisoners. To him, these weren't evil people from war stories. They were just tired, but he had a job to do. He wrote her name on a clipboard, adding a note, pregnant, about 7 months. Next to it, he wrote special care medical. He wasn't sure what that meant, but her shaky hands bothered him. By noon, she was in Barack 12B. The room smelled of soap and hay. Thin beds lined the floor. A small stove warmed the corner. 2 other women helped her settle. One spoke broken English, saying she used to work for the Red Cross in Bremen. Another, older woman rubbed her sore feet and said at least the Americans let them keep their shoes. Outside, guards walked with rifles low, their boots crunching on gravel. The sound of their steps felt like a calm song, steady and safe. The first night was quiet. Then came hunger. The food was simple bread, beans, thin soup. But to those who had survived dangerous boat trips and bombed train stations, it felt like a feast. Still, the women ate carefully, saving bits for later. When snow melted, water dripped through roof cracks into small tins they placed by their beds. Every sound was loud, the whistle of far trains, the creak of wood, the soft hopes of women waiting for their babies. As weeks passed, routines formed. Guards brought milk bottles each morning, quietly leaving them by the door. Once, the young sergeant brought a small bag of sugar, pretending it was a mistake. She looked at him through the frosty window and nodded, a thank you that felt both brave and kind. He blushed and walked away, boots sinking in mud. The camp's doctor, Captain Raymond Harlon, a quiet man with tired eyes, kept careful notes. Subject healthy, good vitals. Suggest extra food. His reports went up the chain, stamped with plain army neatness. But beneath the papers was something bold, a belief that even an enemy mother's life mattered. Not all guards agreed. One sneered, saying it was too kind. They didn't spare our men in France, he said. Why should we? Harlan replied calmly. Because we're not them. His words silenced the mess hall. That night, the same guard slipped a blanket through the women's door. Were changed loyalties in quiet, strange ways. In January, the woman's health weakened. Cold air crept under the walls, and she shivered at night. A nurse, Lieutenant Helen Parks, checked on her daily, fixing blankets and teaching her to breathe through pain. Parks wrote in her diary, she calls her unborn baby Freda. It means peace. I wish peace was real. Those notes, never meant for history, were found years later in an old archive. The ink faded but clear, a quiet proof that kindness lived even here. Outside, life went on. Texans drove by in trucks, sometimes staring at the camp's towers. Newspapers rarely mentioned the women, focusing on battles far away. But inside the camp, a gentle calm grew. The women sang soft songs in German. Guards acted like they didn't hear. Each morning, when the bugle played, the camp woke not just with rules, but with something softer: routine, strength, and a tiny bit of trust. One day, as she washed clothes by a shared tub, she heard laughter from a nearby building. An American soldier was teaching two German prisoners to play baseball with a broomstick. She watched, hands wet and red from cold water. The ball flew high, landing near the mess hall. For a moment, she forgot the fences, the war, the fear. It was just a sunny day in Texas, and men were laughing. She smiled, a quick, risky thing, then turned away, ashamed of hope. That night, thunder rolled over the plains. Rain hit the buildings, and she woke to sharp pains like lightning in her body. The other women gathered, whispering, grabbing towels. Someone ran for the nurse. Outside, guards hesitated. It wasn't their place to enter. But the young sergeant pushed through, holding a lantern. His hands shook as he gave it to Parks. "She needs light," he said simply. Hours passed. The storm roared. The air filled with sweat, fear, and prayers in two languages. Near morning, a cry broke the quiet, not of pain, but of life. A baby's thin wail cut through the rain. Parks sighed, wiping her face. "A girl," she said softly. "She's breathing." The woman lay still, tears running down her dirty cheeks. The sergeant looked down, eyes wide, unsure whether to smile or salute. For the first time since the war started, something new came into the world, belonging to no side, a life free of nations. Outside, the rain slowed. The American flag hung wet over the gate. Inside Barack 12B, the baby's cry echoed softly against the wood. No record would note this moment. No newspaper would tell it. Yet in that small sound, something old and strong stirred, a reminder that even in a prison, humanity still lived. And though no one knew it yet, news of that birth would soon reach the War Department, raising questions not about cruelty, but about kindness and whether mercy could be a weapon in war. Dawn spread slowly over Texas, turning the wire fences silver. Inside the camp, the smell of oatmeal and wood smoke filled the air. The war felt far away, just radio noise and rumors. The baby in Barack 12B slept in a wooden box lined with a wool blanket from an American soldier. The mother, thinner but alive, touched her baby's cheek, as if checking if warmth was real. Her name, though rarely used, was Analise. In this strange place of fences and lights, she found an odd kind of freedom, a routine. The guards learned to treat her and others not as prisoners, but as people they cared for. Each morning, Sergeant Miller, the same young man who brought the lantern, stood by the food tent with a clipboard, calling names in a voice both firm and kind. The women nodded quietly. The camp felt like a small town, orderly, busy, almost normal. Work was given carefully. Stronger women fixed uniforms for captured soldiers. Others grew vegetables behind the kitchen. New mothers, like Analise, stayed near the medical tent. There, Nurse Parks and Dr. Harlon worked with clean smells, soft words, and tired skill. For Harlon, who had treated war wounds in North Africa, these women were a strange comfort. "Enemies," he wrote home, "who smile when you give them medicine." The camp followed war rules closely. Food was measured exactly. Letters were checked but sent. Even church services were allowed, with songs mixing languages. It was a show of fairness, America proving it was better than the enemy. But beneath the rules, something human grew. Guards saw the women knit socks for their babies, just like their own sisters did. They sang soft songs with the same love. Over time, pity turned to respect, and respect became understanding. Analise learned simple English words: milk, doctor, thank you. She moved slowly, still weak from birth, but held herself with quiet pride. Guards joked that her baby, nicknamed Texas, would speak 2 languages. When warm winds blew, she stood by the fence, watching farmers plow fields, the dirt rising like breath. In that rhythm, she felt life going on, ignoring the war. Not everyone liked this. In the officers' mess, talk grew tense. Lieutenant Graves, a strict man from Georgia, said the camp was too soft. He thought kindness made prisoners bold and weakened rules. Harlon disagreed. "Discipline is fear," he said. "This is rarer." His words hung heavy, but he knew the risk. The army was checking camps across the country, wanting to be sure they weren't too kind. Publicly, the government focused on control. Privately, it struggled with guilt. For the women, life inside the fence had its own calendar. Not dates, but deliveries of milk, letters, or news from Europe. They heard Berlin was under attack, that the war might end soon. Hope became risky. Younger women dreamed of freedom. Older ones feared it. For Analise, whose baby was born under enemy eyes, going home brought fear. She wondered if Germany would see her child as shame or survival. One afternoon, Nurse Parks found her sewing by sunlight near the laundry shed. "You need a name for her papers," Parks said, pointing to the baby. Analise paused. "Freda," she said softly. "It means peace." Parks smiled. "We'll make it official." That evening, she filed the papers, adding a note, "Born healthy, mother improving, no problems." The form went into an army file, another quiet miracle. As spring came, the camp felt almost like a home. Gardens grew beans and corn. Prisoners built birdhouses from spare wood, painting them blue and white. Guards bet cigarettes on baseball games played with rough bats. Sometimes the women watched, laughter slipping through the fence like light through cracks. For a few hours, enemies forgot who they were meant to be. But tension hid beneath. New male prisoners arrived, tough from battle. They mocked the women's comfort, calling them shameful. Some refused food cooked by women. When one spat near Analise's washing line, Miller stepped in, pushing him back. "Not here," he warned. The man glared but stayed quiet. The line between kindness and control was thin. That night, Dr. Harlon met the camp commander. "We can't keep them separate forever," Harlon said. "These women are civilians we protect." The commander sighed. "Care costs money. The war's ending. Washington wants cuts." Harlon knew this meant less food, fewer supplies, and danger for the babies. He went back to the medical tent, jaw tight, looking at Freda, sleeping under a wool blanket. He whispered, "Stay alive, little one. Prove them wrong." Weeks blurred together. The radio spoke of Allied wins, bombed cities, and surrender talks. One morning, American flags were low. President Roosevelt had died. Silence spread through the camp. Even prisoners stood still to honor him. Death ignored borders. As summer grew, rumors of freedom came. Repatriation forms were whispered about like prayers. Some women cheered, others cried. Analise stood in her doorway, watching the sun set behind the towers. She felt torn between two worlds, one that jailed her but showed mercy, and one that raised her but might reject her. On July 4th, guards held a small party. Music played, and the smell of grilled meat floated over the camp. Analise and the women watched from afar. Parks gave out paper flags. "For the kids," she said. Freda held hers, cooing softly. It was strange. A German baby waving an American flag in a prison. Yet it felt special. That night, Miller wrote in his book, "No problems. Birth steady, spirits good." He paused, then added, "Enemy treated with respect." He underlined it twice. But the next morning, a message came from Washington, cold and plain. The women were to be moved to a processing center for return within a month. The camp's test of kindness was over. Analise packed her few things: a comb, a scarf, the blanket Freda was wrapped in at birth. Outside, guards took down birdhouses, preparing to close. The fences would soon be empty. But one thought stood out: the war might end, but the question of what it meant to be human was just beginning. Rain streaked the barack windows as thunder rolled over Texas. The camp, once so orderly, felt uneasy. Repatriation orders came, but with no clear dates, and worry spread like a sickness. In Barack 12B, Analise rocked Freda, singing a soft song from Bremen before the bombs. The melody was gentle, but it made guards uneasy. A sound from the enemy, too soft for a place of control. Captain Harlon stood by the medical tent, watching the storm. Reports from other camps worried him. Talk of too much kindness, questions from Washington, warnings about caring too much. The army wanted prisons to show strength, not heart. His conscience disagreed. He'd seen too much death to fear kindness. But each kind act brought more attention from above. That morning, he got a secret letter asking for a list of all pregnancies, births, and special care. In the margin, someone wrote in red, "Public doesn't like this. Keep it quiet." That night, a truck arrived from Fort Sam Houston, its lights cutting through fog. Two officers stepped out, uniforms neat, faces stern. They were there to check the camp. We'll look at all medical areas, one said. The Army wants clear records. Harlon nodded, knowing his honesty could cost him his job. By morning, the officers walked the camp, taking notes. They stopped outside the women's area, hearing a baby's soft coo. So it's true, one said. A German child born here. He turned to Harlon. You know what this means? Harlon looked back calmly. It means the mother lived. The officer frowned, as if the answer was defiance. Rumors spread fast. Guards whispered the camp might close, that prisoners would move north before the war ended. Some soldiers disliked the attention. Others feared punishment for their small kindnesses. The extra milk, hidden sugar, shared laughs over baseball. By evening, the mood shifted. What felt like a small village now buzzed with distrust. Miller stayed away from the women's area, but when he passed Barack 12B, he saw Freda crawling, reaching for sunlight through cracks. Analise smiled faintly. When she saw him, she nodded once, a look that crossed words. He looked away, ashamed of caring. Later that week, Harlon was called to the commander's office. Maps and reports covered the desk. Captain, the commander said, Washington wants civilians, especially women, sent back soon. No emotional stories to mess up the post-war plan. Harlon stayed silent. You've done good work, the commander added. But no more extra food or baby supplies. We're soldiers, not babysitters. That night, Harlon sat alone in the medical tent, staring at empty beds. The rain stopped, leaving silence. He thought of Freda, clutching her mother's thumb with strength. To the army, she was a problem. To him, she was proof war didn't win everything. He wrote in his diary, "Some lives are worth breaking rules for." The next morning, another baby's cry mixed with a woman's groans. Another prisoner was giving birth. Parks rushed over, sleeves up, hair messy. "We need blankets, hot water, light," she ordered. Miller hesitated, thinking of the new rules. "Doctor's orders." Parks snapped. He obeyed. The birth took hours, filled with prayers and sweat. Finally, a small baby was born, breathing. When the officers returned, Harlon faced them calmly. "Another birth," he said. "Mother and child fine." They looked uneasy. "You're not allowed to keep doing this," one said coldly. "The war's not over." Harlon stood tall. "Maybe not, but this part can be." The officer stared, then left. That evening, tension broke. New male prisoners shouted across the fence, calling the women traitors. Their voices carried, bitter with loss. The women ignored them, but one threw a stone that hit a Barack wall. Miller stepped in, rifle up. "Enough!" he shouted. The men backed off. In the quiet, the women felt a bond. They weren't just prisoners, they were mothers protecting something beyond nations. Days became weeks. Harlon kept treating babies secretly, with Parks faking supply requests. Miller smuggled milk under his jacket. Each small act tied them closer, a quiet team built on kindness. Guards joked that compassion was their new secret weapon, but peace was fragile. In May, news of Germany's surrender came. Bells rang in nearby towns, and fireworks lit the sky. But in the camp, no one cheered. For prisoners, victory meant leaving. For guards, it meant facing choices. Orders would soon close the camp and send everyone home. The women feared what home meant: ruins, judgment, ghosts. On the last Sunday, a church service was held in the mess hall. The chaplain spoke of forgiveness and healing. His voice shook as he read, "He mocketh wars to cease." Silence followed. Then Analise sang a German hymn, its tune familiar. Others joined, even guards, heads bowed. It was a song their mothers knew. For a moment, language didn't matter. After, Harlon found Analise by the fence, watching the sky. "They'll move you soon," he said. "You'll go home." She nodded, holding Freda. "America is her only home," she whispered. He wanted to say kindness had no borders, but the words stuck. Instead, he said, "Keep her safe." At dawn, trucks arrived. Engines roared. Men shouted orders. The camp felt empty. As Analise climbed aboard, Parks gave her an envelope with a birth certificate, stamped official. Parks wrote, "Born free." As the trucks left, dust rising, Miller watched from the gate. Harlon stood beside him, hands behind his back. "Will they remember us kindly?" Miller asked. Harlon didn't answer. A baby's cry carried on the wind, thin but strong. It was enough, but an unopened message sat on the commander's desk, saying all who helped the women would be investigated. The war inside the fence wasn't over. The harbor smelled of salt, rust, and smoke as the ship's horn sounded over the gray Atlantic. It was April 1946, and New York's Camp Kilmer buzzed with people. Uniformed men, nurses, and German civilians stood in rows under light rain. Analise held Freda close under a worn coat. The baby, almost 1, had round cheeks and curly hair. Her tag read, POW dependent, repatriation. Crates of bags and papers were piled high, lives turned into bundles. The wind was sharp. A sailor checked her name and pointed forward. Germany, he said, like it was a punishment. She nodded, too tired to speak. Nurse Parks watched from the dock, against rules, raising a hand quietly. Analise saw, pressed Freda's head to her shoulder, and whispered something the wind took away. She climbed the ship's ramp, the boards shaking. The ship moved through waves toward a home she didn't know anymore. The Atlantic felt endless, splitting 2 worlds, one of unexpected kindness, one of feared judgment. Nights on the ship were long. People spoke quietly, wondering if their homes stood, if their families lived, if their pasts could be forgiven. Analise stayed apart, rocking Freda in a small bunk, steady like a heartbeat. A woman asked, "Were they cruel?" Analise paused. "No, that was the cruelty." The woman didn't ask again. At Bremerhaven, the sky was a hard blue. Smoke rose from ruined streets. Cranes creaked like bones. Officers processed people quickly, giving rations, blankets, and camp directions. An officer frowned at Freda's English birth certificate. "American?" he asked. She nodded. "She was born there." He frowned. "Then she's not ours." He stamped the paper, ink smearing. The camp near Hamburg was cold and crowded, full of widows, orphans, and refugees. People stared when Analise spoke, her accent soft, her calm strange. Word spread her child was born in America, and pity turned to distrust. An old woman hissed, "Enemy's child." Analise stayed silent. She'd learned silence was strong. She worked in the camp kitchen, peeling potatoes and making thin soup. Freda slept in a basket by the stove. When officers visited, Analise answered in slow English, polite but proud. At night, she remembered Texas, crickets, laughter, warm earth after rain. Those memories felt like a secret she couldn't share. Letters came from America, short and checked. One from Harlon said, "They're closing the camp. Records are sealed. Some call our work mercy, others weakness. Keep your child safe. She shows humanity outlived us." She read it by candlelight, hands shaking. The words glowed brighter than the flame. That spring, Freda walked, toddling across the floor with stubborn steps. Her gray eyes and smile softened even angry faces. Camp kids mocked her American birth, chanting "enemy baby." Analise smoothed her hair. "You're no side," she whispered. "You're a bridge, but bridges are lonely." When the camp closed in summer, Analise worked as a translator for British forces. Her English, learned in captivity, made her useful but suspicious. She kept her hair neat, her feelings hidden, shaped by watchtowers. She walked Hamburg's broken streets, translating reports while Freda stayed in a nearby nursery. The city rebuilt slowly. In 1950, Freda's American birth certificate was canceled. Her nationality changed to West German. The paper meant everything and nothing. Analise kept it with Harlan's letter in a tin box. Some nights, she touched the faded signatures, proof of a kinderplace. Years passed. Freda grew tall, her accent a mix of German and Texas sounds she never heard. She said she was born in America, and kids laughed, thinking she bragged. Only Annalise's silence stopped her from explaining. In 1963, when the Berlin Wall rose, Analise knitted by her window, the radio talking of power. She thought of the Camp Hearn women, those who returned, those who vanished. Their kindness, like their prison, was a secret history. One evening, Freda found the tin box. Inside were papers and a photo of a nurse holding a baby under a sign. Compound D. "Who is she?" Freda asked. Analise smiled. "Someone who thought the war could end early." She closed the box, fingers on the latch. As she aged, Analise wrote memories. "In my enemy's land, I saw kindness stronger than bullets. They feared it, maybe rightly, for mercy lasts longer than empires. The notebook stayed unfinished. When she died, Freda found it by the tin box, smelling of salt and smoke. Years later, historians found sealed records, reports, rosters, photos marked secret. One showed 2 babies in army blankets, labeled POW Sector 1945. The faces were blurry. No one knew if Freda was one. The files sparked brief interest, then faded under new wars. But the papers still speak, written in ink and kindness. If you listen through history's noise, you hear a baby's cry in a wooden barack as thunder rolls. Not fear, but arrival, proof life found a way, even in chains. The names of those who carried that humanity are mostly gone, but the lesson stays not in books, but in quiet places where conscience lives. Mercy to an enemy is never weak, it defies war itself. And history, loud as it marches, always leaves room for that whisper.